what's really scary is when people are meeting a digital boyfriend that doesn't really exist and they never actually meet up with the person, but they've fallen in love with, this is happening around the world.
Buongiorno. You're listening to Going, Where God is at Work, a podcast that sits at the intersection of missions theory and practice. We're walking on our call to ministry in faraway places and happy to have you join us on the journey. I'm your host, Jesse Pauli, a missions leader serving in Rome. And I'm here with Alessandro Di Leonardo, church planter serving in Cisterna di Latina, and Jen Williamson, our missiologist who lives and works in Lyon. Jen, how are you doing? I heard you celebrated your birthday last week. We didn't record in honor of your celebration.
Yeah, it was great. So my actual birthday, my husband was traveling, so I went and got a massage. It was a nice, relaxing day. But then we had a party this weekend. Bunch of friends over for an aperitif, and David made cocktails and mocktails, and it was a lot of fun. It just reminds me that it's good to mark. I don't usually celebrate my birthday, but it felt like something we wanted to do this year, and I think it's good to mark different seasons and ages. And it was really fun. We had people kind of from different spheres of life, so it's kind of fun when you see those worlds crash together. Christians and non-Christians, and friends from work and friends from church and friends from around. So it was a really nice ambiance, and David decorated my cake. It was beautiful, so that was fun.
Oh wow! What kind of cake was it?
The cake was disgusting, to be honest, because the frosting tasted amazing and the filling tasted amazing. But first of all, I'm really not a great baker, and second of all, I'm gluten-free, and so learning to bake with gluten-free flours is just an ongoing challenge. Yeah. So I made the cake, and that's what was disgusting. David frosted it, and it was beautiful, and the frosting was amazingly delicious. And when people were gone, before we threw the whole rest of the cake directly into the garbage, we sat there and ate the frosting off of bunches of it, like small children. So,
is there something that people do in France that is unusual on birthdays? Like a traditional thing?
I don't know if this is unusual. Well, it was unusual for me, but it's really common for someone to throw their own birthday party, to say, it's my birthday, here's my invitations, come. And even for us, it was like, I made the birthday invitations, but we said, RSVP to David. I don't know. It just, as an American, somehow you don't really throw your own party, I don't think. But I like that that's totally normal here to say, I'm celebrating my birthday, please come. Yeah. We had a thing too. David wrote in, if you'd like to bring a gift, Jen loves to cook, so please bring a sample of your favorite spice and a recipe that you use it in. So that's really fun, because I have a bunch of spices and new recipes to try. So.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I know here in Italy, they it's mostly for the kids. I don't know if you know this, Jesse, but they like to break the candle, specifically the number, the candle. Like if your son is celebrating, 3 years old, then afterwards you got to snap the candle.
Oh, no, I did not know that. Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I didn't know until people started doing it.
Oh, man. And how was your weekend? I should say, because I was there too, put on Night to Shine, in third annual Night to Shine in Cisterna di Latina.
Yeah, it was awesome. For those who don't know what Night to Shine is, it's an event that's brought to by Tim Tebow Foundation that was started in Florida, but now it's done all over the world in over 1,000 cities, which is amazing. And Cisterna di Latina is one of the 2 cities in Italy, and it's on the map. Yeah, it's an event where it's a prom-like event where you celebrate people with disabilities, specifically mental disability, but not only. And so we had that, and it was just amazing. Like Jesse said, it was a 3rd edition here in Cisterna, and you could already see that by the 3rd time, people are starting to see that we mean business, like we actually care, we love, as opposed to just one-off events that here in Italy, unfortunately, have too many where they do something and then they stop. But the third time was the charm. So we're looking forward to seeing what kind of fruits. We already seen some, but more fruits to come forward with that. It was a blessing.
Cool.
Yeah, every year that I've participated has been so much. It's just fun to see the different people that peek their head in and come to see what's going on, and it's a very public night that's put on. It's really cool. A lot of fun. For us, it's been a kind of, I don't know, what do you say, like a quiet season where we're just trying to keep everything going. You might notice that my angle is different, so I built a new desk setup in my office, which I'm very excited about. But yeah, it's been preparing for this storm. I feel like this spring and summer are really going to be packed with lots of different things going on, and so February has kind of been that just maintenance mode for a little bit. So, well, great. Today we are jumping into a little bit of a different topic. Instead of the taboo things that we've been addressing this season, we're jumping into an article that comes out of the World Evangelical Alliance, and more specifically, the Mission Commission. We actually have Jen, who is a part of the Mission Commission, and she can tell us more in a minute. But something I thought was really interesting. This article is about like the trends and forecasting of kind of what's happening in mission. And we're three Americans that talk a lot from an American perspective. And then we're also all three in Europe. So we talk a lot about a European perspective. But this is written by Dr. Jamie Matenga. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He's a Maori from New Zealand. And the author of a book, Mutuality of Belonging, towards harmonizing culturally diverse mission groups. And also the co-author of Mission in Motion, speaking frankly of mobilization. And so the voice of the article we're going to be addressing and talking about is going from the Global South, coming from New Zealand. And Jamie, if I understand correctly, is the co-leader of the Mission Commission for the World Evangelical Alliance.
Yeah, exactly. I met Jamie for the first time in Seoul when I was just at the World Evangelical Alliance General Assembly, end of October. And he's a great guy, and he co-leads with Dr. Ruth Wall, the Missions Commission. And after meeting them, they were restructuring the whole steering committee and everything for 2026. So I've just been recently appointed as the North American representative to the steering committee of the World Evangelical Alliance Missions Commission. So awesome. It's a really great opportunity to have such a broad picture of how God is working around the world and to hear from so many different voices. Because as you just said, Jesse, here we're three, not only just North Americans, but Americans. And on the Missions Commission, I'll be one voice from North America. And then there's 9 other regions of the world that are represented on the steering committee. So it really kind of opens up the conversation about how and where God is at work and what missions looks like around the world and how we can collaborate, especially as we have shifted to this paradigm of missions from everywhere to everywhere.
Yeah, that's good, Jen, to be able to be able to hear other voices, and I'm honored to be able to know the one who's going to be representing the United States of America. That's amazing Canada. To say. And Canada. Okay. But something worth mentioning is as before we dive into this article, it's an article that kind of projects 12 trends that are currently happening and predicted to continue to happen. And what's something that worth mentioning is that this is really the work of a prophet. Sometimes when one doesn't fully understand what the work of the prophet is in the biblical times, specifically Old Testament, at times we think that they're predicting the future. And at times there are prophetic prophecies where things have not happened yet. But a lot of times, most of their work is actually declaring that which God had already said in the past, and they're just kind of then relating it to what's happening now and trying to get the attention specifically of the leaders, the spiritual leaders, in fact, to be able to say, hey, look what's happening. If we continue in this path, it's not going to go well. Or if we continue in this path, it's going to go well. And so that's really what Jay Matanga is doing. He's not predicting the future. He's just kind of synthesizing and opening up everything to what God said and relating it to today. And then kind of saying to the spiritual leaders, hey, let's be mindful of what is happening and what will happen so that we can work at it together.
Yeah, it's really a great piece. And one of the encouraging things that I think we'll see as we discuss it even now is a lot of the different things that we've been talking about are also represented in this article, which just kind of shows that there's this sense of confirmation that what we're practicing and realizing on as we practice, he in another part of the world is also experiencing. And I think it's just another sign of the unity of the body of Christ and the way that the Holy Spirit's moving really across the world. So we will make sure to link in the show notes both this article, but as well as Jay Matenga's website, where you can read more about his story and find other ways to interact with the material that he's putting out there. But the way we thought we'd organize the podcast today is just to each pick one, maybe two things from the article that were particularly resonating with us, and just have a little bit of an open conversation around those. There's really 12 things that he kind of addresses, and the first two, ironically enough, are things that we've also addressed especially in season 1. It's this idea of the corruption of utility, and just the thought that we try so hard and we focus just on if something is useful or not to us, and really he goes in the second point to say the antidote to that is mutuality, which I think we can kind of summarize as missions with the whole concept that we've been talking about, how important it is to see ourselves as just a part of what God's doing, and we're actually doing it alongside God, alongside the people of God. And so that's kind of setting us up for the rest of the framework that's really addressing various areas that we're experiencing in missions. And so anyone want to jump in first and pick one of the areas that you'd like to bring up?
I can start us. This is more because of personal experience. The point on point 6, the end of the NGO era. My first mission trip was in Cambodia. I became a Christian in 2009, and I went 2010 as a college student. And I remember going to Cambodia. And if you don't know the history of Cambodia, they went through a genocide within itself, where there was a regime of inside where they were trying to decimate and kill all the educated people. And so they're like rebuilding itself, but obviously they couldn't by themselves. So a lot of NGOs were developed. But it was interesting when I came there, which was probably 40 years after the event, there was just buildings after buildings, empty buildings, massive buildings. And I'm like, what's that? It's like, they built this, but then they stopped. They built that, then they stopped. And these were government, not NGOs. These were government building that they were sort of trying to put their foot in to see, but then it didn't work out. So then what came in was the NGOs. So there was NGOs in every corner. And so in 2010, NGOs was still a very thing. It was like the thing to use as the platform to go reach people because the government wasn't working. But what I find now, that's interesting here, now that I'm serving in Italy, it's sort of like in fact, they're trying to get rid of the NGO model, even from non-Christian perspective, just because they don't trust the government, but they also don't trust entities. And now they don't know what to trust. And so that's why there's a lot of distrust. We just talked about Night to Shine, where there's these NGOs who are like putting on something because they get money somewhere. They put on something, but then they don't do anything anymore. So there's always this skeptical idea of like, okay, you're here. Let's just take advantage of what you have to offer, but you're not coming back. And then when they saw us come back the second year, they were like really amazed. And then when they saw us coming this third time, you could really say like, oh, now they're here to stay. We believe that. And so kind of realizing that we have to, it might take longer because of, unfortunately, the distrust that took over the years. It's going to take longer for us. And we have to know that that we mean well, but people don't trust us, and we have to be open to that. I'll give you an example. When getting ready for Night to Shine, I went to the supermarket and I saw a family with their daughter, I assume, that clearly had Down syndrome. And I felt like God telling me, invite them. And I was like, doing my own thing. And I said, no, how am I going to approach them? And so then I paid and left, but I forgot to get something. So I went in and I said, if they're going to be at the cash register, I'm going to go talk to them. And they happened to be there. So I felt like God was telling me, go talk to them. But the crazy thing is as I approached them, the first I talked to them, I assumed the mother, could have been the grandmother, wouldn't look at me, like really wouldn't talk. And so I said, oh, let me talk to the dad. And he also wouldn't look at me. And I was super discouraged. They left and I couldn't even get a word in. But I think the Lord wanted me to see that, hey, like, this is the distrust that you live in, and you have to just keep going. Like you have to be a light where people have been disillusioned for so long. And so it hurt a lot. But at the same time, God has showed me that when people then do trust you, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something with the trust issues of the NGOs. In Italy, it's interesting too. One of the things that we run into is there's associations that are either registered and recognized or unregistered and unrecognized. So even within the NGO system here, you kind of have a layer of trust or not trust, and you get access to more things or less things based on that. And it's really interesting too, because I was talking to a lawyer who was kind of helping us figure some things out with our NGO, and the concept was kind of, you have your religious things, your faith stuff needs to be separate from the good works you do.
It's the same in France.
Yeah, and to me, it's like, in a way, this kind of demise of NGOs and that kind of system is forcing Christians to not live in that dichotomy of separating our faith and our connection, spiritual connection with the Lord, from what we do. And what we do just has to become deeply integrated with our faith. And so instead of saying, okay, I'm going to volunteer at that NGO as part of my outreach or my way of connecting, and it's like, no, you just have to work and live your life as a Christian in whatever space you're at, and not separate the two things. It could be interesting, to almost be used as a way to make the church be more the church and less.
Right. And I think, you've hit on something that actually is a theme running through maybe all 12 of these, Alessandro. Mark Sayers, who's an Australian pastor, wrote A Non-Anxious Presence. The subtitle is How a Changing and Complex World Will Create a Remnant of Renewed Christian Leaders. And in this book, he says we're living in what he calls gray zones. I think I would call them liminal spaces or whatever, but it's exactly what you're saying, between the time when people would put a lot of faith in institutions and governments. And by the way, that includes the church. To where they have no confidence in those things anymore, but they don't know where to place their confidence. As you just said, they don't know, what do I depend on? And Jesse, I love how you just brought this around, because this is true in France. Every church sort of has its like, you give to the church that can only pay pastor salaries or buy communion elements or like do stuff directly related to running a church. And then they all have to have sort of this charitable wing if we want to have a food pantry or any other thing to help people. And in especially, I think, more socialist governments, believers can tend to say, well, the government's going to take care of these people. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I actually think some government supports can be helpful and meaningful. But I also think individually and collectively as a body of Christ, but we're responsible to give, regardless of whether I get a tax deduction for it, or regardless of, whether there's something coming back at me because I was able to help or serve or give a hand. And I agree, if we collapse the sort of organized NGO, the structural, those things that people are losing confidence in, and yet the body of Christ rises up to fill in that gap, that could be a tremendous opportunity for the gospel.
Yeah, I think we're already, like, I'm getting the sense, I'm leading a small team of missionaries. Well, it's growing, but also just working with other missionaries. I'm getting even some of the younger generation is even ahead of us, I think, in this regard. They're asking the questions of why do I need to be a part of an NGO as a missionary? Why don't I just come and get a job and find a place to work and insert themselves into the culture and assimilate fully? And we've always had that. I can't remember now the name of the scale, but I remember learning about the scale. It's like C1, C2, C3. It was kind of like this idea of, like, we're each going to assimilate into the culture at different levels. But yeah, this idea of the NGO that is fading away. I'm praying it just pushes us to be more a biblical representation of the church and active.
Yep. Part of that section in the article also tackles on the funding, right? Because when you start getting rid of government help and NGO help, then funding in U.S. American churches, they might have ways to accumulate or to procure funds within themselves, right? They have people who can give and this and that. But when it comes to like, for example, Italy, but I know a lot of other parts of the world, they depend on funding from outside, specifically from the U.S. So when it seems like this might also end, and we're experiencing that personally, not necessarily that our connections are starting to cut off, but kind of realizing that they're depleting. And so we're really wrestling with, but also seeking to see what are some other ways that we could self-fund or differently fund to keep the mission going. In one case we could say, well, if they can give there, then we can give here. And absolutely, there's a biblical mandate about giving, but there's different levels of giving where people are coming from. And so kind of we're exploring the idea of potentially, how we do a lot of things for nonprofit, actually trying to make profit, so then we can use the funds to then do kingdom work. So different models. I've been talking to Jesse about this and other people. So definitely, as these things are going away, then we have to come up with different ways of thinking, specifically in the area of funding.
Yeah, it's ongoing, right? And it's so multi-layered. Yeah, it's a good point.
I think just to add to that, kind of part of the push for rethinking funding is the NGO stuff for sure, but part of it is also the shift of the majority being to the global South, and we're I think he says in the article, if I remember correctly, is that 69% of Christians now reside in the global South, and that's causing the move of refugees, immigrants to other places, like we're experiencing here in Europe. They're bringing their faith with them, and I think there's I think we were talking about this, Alessandro. Maybe it was with you that I was talking about it. Like it was with you. This idea that the immigrant needs to start seeing themselves as, in a sense, as a missionary, as someone who needs to come into this new space that they're in and be able to share their faith, and they're going to have influence and be impactful more than maybe we've thought before. And certainly, you're seeing that out in Cisterna, where a large part of your church are immigrants, and yet you guys are really having quite an influence and impact in that town. So
Yeah.
I think that is going to start begging a lot of questions over funding, a lot of questions over how do you do missions, and we're going to see increasing. And my hope, my prayer is that those coming from the global south won't just plant and start ethnic churches, but that they'll actually see themselves as kind of international churches, as ways to reach out to all the people in a city or in a place.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the points that Jay makes, is he calls it the power of the majority on the move. And there's like a tension there that he brings out, talking about how we have to be careful about not seeing them as a utilization or something that we can take advantage of, but recognize that these are just people who are living out their faith, and they don't need an institution, which is kind of brings us back into that gray zone area and all of that he says, and I'm quoting him here, they are a wildfire directed by the Spirit of God. So that they don't even need an institution to do that. So like, I don't know, harnessing the power almost seems like, yeah, how do we just affirm who they are and what they're doing as they're moving into these spaces, and do our best to create places of welcome and possibility for those who are displaced. And I mean, many of them have faced trauma, are fleeing for their lives, and there's a lot of, real practical support that they're going to need as well. So
yeah, one of the questions we're asking in our organization is, what do we do with those who are second generation? Because you have the first generation people moving globally, but what about the second generation, that generation that speaks the local language fluently because they've been in the school system the whole time? Maybe in some ways culturally they feel more attached to the local culture because that's what they're in all day at school, and they don't feel as connected to their native culture of their parents. The famous third culture kids that we talked about in previous podcasts, what about those, and how will what will their role be in church leadership, in being a part of influencing the spread of the gospel in places where they're kind of at this unique opportunity. They can kind of hold the balance between two cultures and be a bridge. I know the Chinese church here in Rome is increasingly asking that same question as more and more of their youth are growing and starting to ask, what does the Lord have for them? And as we have global cities around the world, that's just becoming more and more the question. What are we doing with that second generation coming in?
Yeah.
I wanted to take us a little bit to the tech conversation, because obviously, being someone who loves tech, I don't think I'm as early of an adopter as Ted Esler was describing himself in our previous podcast episode, but I do like trying it and playing around with it. And I found it interesting how he points out this in his 12th point, the challenge of tech, the difference of shifting from that generative AI to now agentic AIs. And maybe there's some other people like me who always wondered, what do they mean by agentic AI? It's the idea that the AI starts to operate as an agent, so almost like as a person, as something that can do things automated by itself. And it's not just responding to prompts that you give, but it's actually learning and doing more. And he kind of ties in, there's lots of different dangers in this AI. But one of the things that stood out to me, and it kind of goes back to Alessandro, your point on trust, is that the church is urged to adopt an ethical framework to ensure technology serves rather than replaces human connection. And he talks about this this TRUST, trust, as part of that. And I was just curious because for me, for so long advocating for the use of AI and trying to encourage people to use AI, because I see it as a powerful tool that we can, it's the same if I saw somebody trying to, hit a nail with a notebook, I say, no, go grab that hammer, it's like, to me, it's like, yeah, there's powerful tools for that. But then I'm realizing that not everybody is disciplined to use them the right way. And so, yeah. Excuse me. Figuring out how to leverage those things and find the balance.
I think kind of tying everything that we've sort of already said, and then going to this idea of the technology. Here we have, again, Jen, you representing the United States and Canada. But the question is, do we have people who really know tech having a voice? I think Ted is an exception, and he's got a large influence, so that's great. But we really normally don't put those people who really know tech and give their opinion and their thoughts, especially in the spiritual, in the church world, right? I'm just thinking about the people who came in and did some work for us. They were unbelievably gifted in doing all the stuff for our church when it comes to tech stuff. And then I was asked to do actually a podcast with one of the person in the mission team, and he jokingly said, "Hey, why don't you guys come in as well? Because you guys did so much work." And they were like, "Well, that's not our forte. We don't want to be in the spotlight." And usually that's what ends up happening. People in the tech world, they find themselves comfortable there, so they oftentimes don't have a voice, and kind of finding out how can we hear from them so that we don't impose old models to have them work within that when we're actually limiting. And that's one of the things that Jamie had mentioned in the article.
Yeah. I will say, Alessandro, at the Missionnexus Mission Leaders Conference, which we hold every year in September, the tech network has been growing, and really, really their workshops are some of the most popular. I think, like you said, Ted's an anomaly in a lot of ways about, his passion and love and understanding of technology, coupled with his passion and love and understanding of missions and the gospel world. But I think more and more of us are savvy to the reality that we have to figure out how we're going to live and move within this context that is now upon us, and what that means to us as believers, and where is it, like Jesse was saying, a tool that we can avail ourselves to, and where have we surrendered our humanity and been lost to it and lost our agency because of it.
Yeah, I think to the point, it's, I forget the saying, but it's like the church always seems to be quite a few years behind the rest of the world. And I think one of the things that would be interesting would be to see more kingdom-minded tech people, experts, affirmed, promoted, platformed, so that they can kind of lead the charge and help us think about these things. One of the things that I haven't heard anything from any of these people, but I've been kind of keeping my eye on their website, and some of the stuff they've putting out is out of the UK. It's called Kingdom Code. I don't know if either of you have heard of this before.
No.
But Kingdom Code, they host what they call a hackathon. And it's basically a time where a bunch of Christian tech people, they get together and they help code and create different tools that can be used for churches, for different things. And I was put on by this mostly by someone that within our organization, who the wife is working for our organization, the husband is not, and he went and was a part of this and helped do a translation app. And some of my friends used it recently. They're like, this is amazing. Like, it's cheap, It's doing a phenomenal job with translating the sermons, and it's like those are the kind of people that are thinking about how do we leverage technology for kingdom work. And I think it would be great to, maybe we should try and get someone from Kingdom Code on the podcast. It would be great to just see how we could platform more.
Yeah.
Because even the Lausanne movement, that was one of the things that came out of it was, what's going to happen with technology? How is technology, social media, this digital world going to form the future of our work? And so
I do like that Jamie underlines, though, that like the importance of the relational. That, yeah, no one's going to probably find your church without a website or whatever. I mean, the way most people meet anymore is on dating apps. But what's really scary is when people are meeting a digital boyfriend that doesn't really exist, and they never actually meet up with the person, but they've fallen in love with, this is happening around the world. So the relational human aspect. And so I really like that he pointed back to that. And I think that's becoming a key piece of my thinking. Like, how does this technology allow me to connect or to build relationships in the real world for the sake of the gospel?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back in hand with, Romans, where he talks about how will they know if they don't hear? How will they hear if someone doesn't go and speak to them? And I think it's the same with technology. Like, until we can use technology for lots of things, and we can even find people and connect with people somewhat through technology, but the reality is it's always going to take that intentional kind of first move in person to start bridging the gap and building the relational side of stuff. And that's something that's increasingly difficult when people, especially young people, are building they're starting their relational skills by just computers and video games and not not out in the real world, meeting people and learning. And
Yeah. So technology should always be a conduit, a way that we can use to preach the gospel, but then technology at the same time is causing to be the obstacle that keeps us from sharing to them. So then we have to find out what, using technology to be able to then reach them if we can't get to them. And then once that obstacle is removed, then that relationship happen. Here in Italy, I haven't experienced so much of it. We're very still relational. So you do see kids out all the time doing nothing, but out. I feel like I notice that more whenever I visit the States, when they're sort of like glued to their phone. Here, you still see kids like talking to each other. They still have phones and they still use it way too much, but I think it's less here. But the problem is still there, in the sense that it's not the technology, it's something. And we talked about distrust and not really putting up their real selves when you talk to them. So then in there, we have to find out how can we really preach the gospel if they're not even listening to us. So the same thing applies to technology. Like, how can we get to them and then preach the gospel? So I think realizing they're similar problems, just advancing differently.
Well, I think we could probably talk about the technology side of things for a long time, because it's just such an interesting kind of paradigm. We have both kind of, there's the good and the bad of it, but we just kind of briefly touched on a few of these 12 points that Jay wrote about. One of them that, for example, we didn't really get into is the trauma of tribalism. There's another one here, the promise of positive growth. So we jumped around. We didn't touch on all of them. We would love to hear from you, the listener, if there's any of these that you think you would like more of a deep dive and to go into. Please leave a comment. Thank you for those who have been leaving comments and have been subscribing and liking. We really do hope that you enjoy the conversations that we're having and that you find them insightful. Your ministry is important, and we hope that you consider the time that you spend with us as an investment in the work that you do. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep going wherever Jesus is leading you.